Hello and welcome to this special interview on separation anxiety disorder, brought to you by the Anxiety Disorders Association of British Columbia. I'm Dr. Michael Catchpole and my guest is Dr. Lynn Miller. Dr. Miller is with the Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia and is a registered psychologist. Dr. Miller, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Miller, separation anxiety disorder, could you give everybody a definition, please?
Sure, this is significant distress when a child or adolescent separates from either the caregiver or from the home.
And this would include situations where there's separation within the house or difficulty going to school or...
Sure, you can also throw in having sleepovers or being in the mall by yourself, anytime that a child cannot see or is not close to a parent or the home.
Okay. Now, in terms of home management strategies, what sort of things can parents and caregivers do to help children who have difficulty separating from them?
Well, one of the first things you will notice with children with separation is that there is a lot of physiological arousal or lots of physical distress. The child will be crying, will be quite clingy, will have lots of tummy aches, maybe even be shouting, "Don't go, mommy, don't go." So things that you can do in the home are, for instance, if the mom is upstairs making beds, the child could be downstairs in the living room watching a cartoon, and the mom could shout down every couple of minutes saying, "How you doing?"
How early would you want to start practicing that? What age could you begin that kind of process with a child?
Well, we see lots of inappropriate separation distress around the entry to school. If a child doesn't settle down after the first couple weeks of kindergarten and grade 1, then you might want to start having these small experiments at home or outside in the community.
Interesting. Well, what about a grocery store, for example? What sort of thing could you do or practice in a grocery store?
Oh, that's a terrific example. One of the first things you can do is send a child down at the end of the aisleway to say, go get perhaps another can of tuna fish. And then as a child feels more and more confident, you can ask that child to go a couple of aisles over to perhaps get a favorite treat.
Okay, so you start off, they're in visual contact, but they're, 20, 30, 50 feet away. And then the next step is that they can't see you and they've got to sort of do a task. Is that right?
Sure, and the more of these experiments, the better.
And I guess you want to reward that as well, do you?
Oh yes, lots of hugs, lots of verbal praise, maybe additional time on a reading book at night.
Okay. And what about at school? Child's hanging on to you, won't get out of the car. How could you apply those principles at school?
Sure, this is another prime example of separation, having difficulty going to school and staying at school. The last thing you want to do is pull the child out of the car. So instead, have the child separate successfully after school when none of the other children are around.
So in other words, or you could even go to school like before school begins for the term, for example. You could go on a Saturday and practice having them go to the fence or the slide or...
Sure, and then reward them for that sort of behavior. And for older children, the same thing. They can go inside the school and walk the hallways when none of the other students are around.
Excellent ideas. Does this manifest itself in adolescence as well? Do teenagers sometimes have trouble with separation?
Teenagers can have a lot of difficulty with separation. We see this when they're not wanting to go to do sleepovers or they don't want to go to the grade 6 camping trip with the rest of the classroom.
And this, of course, really causes them to lose out on a lot of good social activity.
Sure, they may even have difficulty sleeping alone in their bed. They may actually, in the middle of the night, wake up and go into the parents' bedroom.
Okay. So again, for that, are we talking about a reward system for improvements?
We couple having rewards along with a slow, graduated exposure or steps away separating from the parent.
Okay, and again, I guess one sort of builds rewards into this process?
Sure. Again, verbal praise is great, additional attention from the parent, small value rewards.
Excellent. Dr. Miller, thank you so much. Very, very valuable information. My guest has been Dr. Lynn Miller, Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia and a registered psychologist.